So today is the glorious appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master and our Param Guru and your Param Guru, and how that goes. And we're going to begin with his pranam mantras. You may not know them all, but I'll chant them and give the translation. First one is easy. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Namane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayataya Kripabdeye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dahine Prabhave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayata Das, who is favored by Srimati Radharani and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. Madhuyojala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute. I offer my respectful obeisance unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who deliver devotional service which is enriched with conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Srila Rupa Goswami. Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtiye Dinatarine Rupanuga Vidurapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine. I offer my respectful obeisance unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement which is against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. And Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. So today is a very glorious day, and I'd like to share several things with you. First, I wanted to read Srila Prabhupada's homage that he wrote, this poem that was offered in 1935 by Srila Prabhupada and published in the Harmonist of March 1936. And this really caught the attention of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, especially one verse where he expresses how Bhaktisiddhanta has saved us from impersonalism, the personalist. So, I think, yeah, this version. Now, Srila Prabhupada actually edited this a little bit. It was a copy of it was found, I think, by Brahmananda in a library in England somewhere, and brought to Prabhupada. He was very happy to see that. And then he did one little editing job on it, which I'm going to include here. Maybe you'll notice it, maybe not. So here's how the poem goes. It's called The Universal Teacher. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May. This is offered on Vyasa Puja in 1935. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May, when he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. O my Master, the evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle, struggle for existence, a human race, the only hope, his divine grace. Misled we are, all going astray. Save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wonder thy ways to turn our face, adore thy feet, your divine grace. Forgotten Krishna, we fallen souls, paying most heavy the illusion's toll. Darkness around, all untrace, the only hope, his divine grace. Message of service thou hast brought, a healthful life as Chaitanya wrought. Unknown to all, it's full of grace. That's your gift, your divine grace. Now here's the stanza that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati really was pleased by, more than any of them. Absolute ascension thou hast proved, impersonal calamity thou hast moved. This gives us a life, anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. And this is the one that Srila Prabhupada edited a little bit. Absolute, let's see if you can tell what he changed. Absolute ascension thou hast proved, impersonal calamity thou hast removed. This gives us a life, anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right, you have the mace. Save me a fallen, your divine grace. The line of service as drawn by you is pleasing and healthy like morning dew. The oldest of all, but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. So I'm going to, in a few minutes, I'm going to read this address, which is a little bit long, but I thought this is Srila Prabhupada's final offering of Vyasa Puja, the 1936 Vyasa Puja. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura left this world on the 1st of January 1937. So this was February 1936, just like this. He appeared in February of the previous year. And Srila Prabhupada had been serving for years as a householder. He was helping the Mata in various ways. He was preaching and doing so many things. So he was well known and much appreciated by the other members of the Gaudiya Mat. And he offered this address, which I'm going to read in a little bit. But first I'm going to review a little bit of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life. And I just wanted to, yes. So, okay. So he appeared in on the 6th of February, 1874. This is the 10th of February because of the lunar calendar. And as you well know, I'm not going to go through all the details, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the great pioneer and revivalist of the Gaudiya Sampradaya and Chaitanya's teachings in the latter part of the 19th century. Of course, we know some of the history of Lord Chaitanya's preaching in 500 years earlier, not 500 years, 500 years from now, but before, in the early part of the 16th century. And his teachings were based on the highest purity, both in the conduct and in teachings, based completely on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and codified and systematized by Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami's followers, But over the years, after his disappearance, and as time went on, various what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Upasampradayas grew up. Specifically, you found the Sahajiyas were a prominent one. Sahajiya means it's easy. What's all of this? You have to see all these strictures and things. And they were literally engaging in illicit sex in the name of Chaitanya Bhakti, of Radha Krishna worship. And it was a horrible situation. And so the name, the status of Chaitanya Bhakti and Gaudiya Vaishnava Bhakti became very tarnished by all of this. And so this is one of the battles that Bhakti Vinod Thakur fought. He has an interesting story himself I won't go into, but when he couldn't even find a Chaitanya Charitamrita in Bengali, not in English, for years. And when he finally found it and read it, he became a real leader in the preaching of Lord Chaitanya's movement. But there was a tremendous amount of work to do to revive it. And so there were various battles with the other sampradayas, and especially when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came on the scene, there was this big battle with the established Brahminical class. There was a lot of casteism. And Lord Chaitanya, as you know, he completely disregarded that. He uplifted Haridas Thakur and even Ramananda Roy. He wasn't a Brahmin, he was a Kayasta, which is a kind of Sudra. But those were his most intimate associates. So this was a huge battle, and the Brahmins were very much against him, both Bhaktivinoda and Bhaktisiddhanta. In fact, there was even a conspiracy to assassinate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This happened, he was leading a pilgrimage in Vrindavan, and they thought they had paid off the sheriff and everything, and But when he saw Bhaktisiddhanta, he said, well, they paid me off, but I can't do it, not for a great sage like you and a pure devotee. So he warned him, and he was saved. But he was willing to undertake the battle and risk his life, in order to propagate the pure teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very heroic. And Prabhupada also did that. You know, he risked his life just coming. And also with the Naxalites, famous in the Calcutta. They're a communist revolutionary group. Those who know India know they're dangerous, right? And they threatened Prabhupada, fly or die. This was the first Calcutta Pandal. And Prabhupada didn't fly and he didn't die. He invited them into the tent, these Naxalites, you know, and gave them nice seats, nice prasadam. And then he was chanting the Brahma Samhita. And then he called them into a private conference and told them, you know, we're also communists, spiritual communism. And he told them about, you know, the Varnashram system. And so he disarmed them, and it's wonderful. But this is the caliber of the great devotees, you know, our great acharyas in this line, is they're very heroic and willing to risk their lives. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was, you know, he had established the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. He established a temple there, which became the Chaitanya Mat. You know, with the Yoga Peeth, the exact place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And he was working so hard. He had established the Vishwa Vaishnav Sabha. And this was the forerunner of the Gaudiya Mat. But he didn't really have an organization. He had his job as a minister. He fathered 14 children. And there was just so much he could do. So he prayed for a ray of Vishnu, a son, who would carry on the mission and do it. And so on the 6th of February 1974, Bhaktisiddhanta Bimala Prasad, he appeared in Puri. Bhaktivinoda's house was right near the temple. And they would, of course, he was in charge of the temple, and you know. And so there's a goddess in there named Bimala. And I forget how it goes, but they say Bimala Prasad means the gift of Bimala. And so then there was a Ratha Yatra, and just in front of his house, the cart stopped. And Bhaktisiddhanta was like 6 months old or something, you know. So Bhaktivinoda's wife took the little baby and put him right at the feet of Lord Jagannath, you know. And a garland fell down and circled the child, you know, as a sign of this is the ray of Vishnu you prayed for, you know. And so as he grew up, he was an extraordinary child. He had such a memory. Like, how old was he? Like 4 or 5 years old. He memorized the whole Bhagavad Gita. And he could explain all the verses. It wasn't just that he memorized and wrote, you know. And he had an eidetic memory, meaning that whatever he read, he never forgot. Even in his old age, he passed away at 62, but he remembered things that he read as a child. Can you imagine never forgetting anything? Like, I mean, we have to go over and over and over the verses just to memorize them, and then we forget pieces of them. Yeah. So he had this incredible intelligence, you know, and Bhaktivinoda soon realized that this was the ray of Vishnu we had prayed for. And he was brilliant in school, obviously. And he became very expert as he grew older in Jyotish, which is astrology. And that's why he got the name Bhaktisiddhanta, because he translated the Surya Siddhanta, which is a book on, authoritative Vedic book on astronomy, astrology, like that. And so he got that name, Siddhanta. And later on, when he established his preaching, he got the name Bhaktisiddhanta. I think that was given to him by Gorkishore. That's Babaji. So it's interesting because he decided not to take his degree, I believe. I know Prabhupada did that. But there was this plan for him to get married, and he didn't want to get married. So he didn't get his degree, but he did get a position. He got a position as a teacher. I think it was in Assam somewhere, where he was comfortably set up as the court pundit, as the advisor and things like that. But then at a certain point he said, this is not what I want to do. And he gave it up and he came back down to at that time, in Mayapur, Navadvip, I think, by that time Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living there. And he needed initiation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur advised him to approach Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Now, Gaurkishore Das Babaji was a great saint and renunciate, and he was known to be. He had spent over 30 years doing parakram in Vrindavan, and he was highly realized and very, very, very renounced. The famous story how he didn't want to be bothered all the time by people coming and visiting and asking for ashirvad. Ashirvad means, please give me a blessing, and a lot of times material blessings they want. So he set up his little bhajan kutir in a latrine. And so, people said, I don't want to go there, it's the smell, like that. But he was chanting there, So Bhaktivinoda Thakur understood. Now he came to Navadvip because of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to hear from him. Even though he was a householder and professional, his erudition, his presentation of Gaudiya Vaishnava, his purity was obvious. And he was known as the seventh Goswami. And so he would listen to him and so forth. And Bhaktivinoda advised Bhaktisiddhanta to take initiation from him. So he approached him and prayed. And he had no other disciples. He hadn't initiated anyone. And he refused. So finally he kept asking. He said, okay, I'll ask Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's how. So Bhaktisiddhanta came back a few days later. Well, did you ask him? He said, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry, he said. So finally he came back to him and asked him. He said no. So he was desperate. So he came and he said, if I can't get your mercy, I'm going to commit suicide. And he seemed to mean it, So Gauraki said, okay. So it was his only disciple. He was his only disciple. And Bhaktisiddhanta, I was reading that, by the way, there's this exhaustive, incredible biography of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that was written by Bhakti Vikas Swami. I remember when he was writing it, all the time, Mahatattva was here, he had copies, he was doing a little proofreading on it and everything. It took years and years and years to produce that. And it's a master. And he's giving it away. You can download it, as a PDF. So if anyone, at the end of this class, if anyone has an iPhone or anything like that, I can airlift it to you. I have it right here. AirDrop, whatever they call it. So after this initiation, Bhaktisiddhanta transformed his whole, thing. He wasn't going to get involved in Jyotish. He wasn't going to get married. He was going to take up the mission that Bhaktivinoda wanted, which was to preach, Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So he vowed to chant 1 billion names of Krishna. Now, what that means is that it's understood that, Haridas Thakur was chanting 300,000 names a day, right? Which is 192 rounds, which is quite a bit more than 300,000 if you actually. So he set himself up in Mayapur, in a little hut, and even 5 minutes around is very, very fast. So Prabhupada once said, yes, Haridas Thakur was chanting 16 rounds a day, which is 5 minutes around if you multiply it out. So he was chanting 16 rounds a day, but he was also managing that Gokapit temple. Where he found the time, I don't know. But he was doing that, very, very austere. When Gaurkishore heard about it, he said, I think our Prabhu is another Raghunath Das Goswami, who was known to be, the Acharya of renunciation. And, the rains would come, as they do in Mayapur, and he would just sit under the leaky roof and with an umbrella, and Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It was an amazing feat. It took him over 9 years to finish those 1 billion names. And so he set up, I think he had the Chaitanya Mat, but it was remote, there really weren't that many people coming. So one person suggested he go to Calcutta. And he invited Gaurkishore to come with him. He said, I'll never go, to that kingdom of Maya, because it's a busy city, like that. So even though his guru was reluctant to go, he got something, the Ultadanga Road, a temple. That was the first place. And he was preaching there. And he was very eager to print books. They had periodicals. He had a daily magazine. He had a monthly. He had weeklies. and books that he was also printing. I'm not sure if he set up a printing press in that temple, but he did at one point. It was even in the temple room, the printing press. He was so eager to print books. So in 1922, this is when Srila Prabhupada first met him. He was established householder. He had one child, either born or on the way. And he was working with in the pharmaceutical business, beginning that career. And there's this wonderful scene. The Lilamrita really has a nice section on his meeting with Bhakti. How his friend Narain had met Bhaktisiddhanta, was very impressed, and he wanted Prabhupada to go. They're both young men. And so they're on the street, and Prabhupada, Abhay Charan, he didn't want to go. Why? Because he said every day his father had invited one of these sadhus to come in, and he would feed them and so forth. But by and large, they were kind of a disappointing lot. It says a lot of them just seemed to be. It was a business. Prabhupada said he even saw one guy in the morning. He'd put on the orange clothes and go around and beg, and then in the afternoon take them off, smoke a beedi. In other words, it wasn't very impressive. So he was thinking, Bhaktisiddhanta is like that, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. But Naren was insistent, thank God. And so Prabhupada went up to see him. And there's this famous scene there where they go up, he's on the roof, and it's described, he sees him and he's sitting very, how Bhaktisiddhanta would sit, very impressive. He was tall, so and very serious, with his discourse. So Prabhupada, so he offered as a basin, before he even got up, Bhaktisiddhanta said, you're two intelligent, educated young men who speak English. Why don't you spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, especially English-speaking lands? So Prabhupada was aghast. At that time, Prabhupada was a follower of Gandhi. And this was obvious from his clothes. Gandhi had this little revolutionary practice of the Indians should weave their own cloth, because that was one of the ways in which England was oppressing India. They had to buy cloth made all in England, and this, it was overpriced, and So he was wearing cloth that was made in India. It was kind of rough. You could see, it wasn't as smooth, but it was an act of revolution. It was resistance. So Prabhupada said, "What's the point? We're still dependent. Who will listen to us? We have to get independence first." And Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, Krishna consciousness is so important, so absolutely important, that it can't wait for anything. And so there was a little back and forth, and Prabhupada then said, I felt I was defeated. He had never been defeated before, and he was never defeated later. He said, but he liked it. He liked being defeated by Bhaktisiddhanta. And at that point, he said he accepted him as his guru in his heart. And then it was years later that he was initiated in Allahabad. Because he was helping the Gaudiya Math, in so many ways, and getting donations, giving donations. So that initiation, Prabhupada had seen Bhaktisiddhanta. He went to Vrindavan and was on Parakram with him, and there's this account of because there's so many temples in Vrindavan, and the other devotees who were there, the other members of Gaudiya Math, there was some temple of Mahavishnu or something, and they were all going to see it, and Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking. And Prabhupada later said, what am I going to find out from seeing this temple? Let me just sit here and listen to Bhaktisiddhanta. Even though he said, it's hard, you couldn't understand a lot of what he was saying, because he used a very high vocabulary and esoteric principles and so forth. But he loved to hear him anyway. He listened anyway. And when Bhaktisiddhanta was, suggested that he initiate Abhay Charan, Prabhu, he said, yes, I have noted he likes to hear. I will definitely initiate him. And so he became Abhay Charan Dasa. That was the name now. Abhay, it says, he who is fearless at the lotus feet of Krishna. So that the history goes on, and Prabhupada was very active in the Gaudiya Math, and but he was still maintaining his business, and he had his family. He had 5 children. So that was, both of those things were going on. But as Krishna, as Prabhupada later recounted, how's it go? Yasyahamana gunnami harashe taddanang shanai. There's a verse that Krishna speaks to Yudhishthira, describing, to those whom I really show my mercy, I take everything away. And then the second half of the verse says, and then their family doesn't like them anymore because they can't, they kick them out. And so they're completely, their only recourse is to depend on me, like that. So Prabhupada would identify with that verse. His family didn't actually kick him out, but they didn't support his preaching either. And there was an incident where his wife, he came back. He had this whole thing in Jhansi, that he got a building that was loaned to him anyway, and he had his first disciple, Acharya Prabhakar, who was a Sanskritist, who helped Prabhupada in that regard. And they were doing Harinam, they were making members, and they said, well, this is it, I'm preaching in English and I'm doing it. But no, Krishna had other plans. And so the governor's wife wanted to use it for a ladies' auxiliary or something, and so he was kicked out. I mean, he didn't have ownership. And so at that point, I think he went back home. I may have the chronology not right, but his last trip, he found that his wife had sold his Bhagavatam for tea biscuits, so she could get tea biscuits. And so he said, okay, it's either me or tea. And so she was joking, so he's, it's tea, I'll take tea. So Prabhupada left, and he said, well, he's left so many times before, his wife thought, he'll come back. Never came back. He took Vanaprastha at that point. And then there was a whole thing of him taking sannyas, which also wasn't automatic. His guru, Bhaktisiddhanta, kept coming in dreams to take, you should take sannyas, and he said, I was aghast, I was horrified. But his godbrother, especially Keshava Maharaj, who finally gave him, they encouraged, if you really want to preach, then you need that. So he took sannyas in 58, 59, I forget the exact year. And it was difficult. And but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was also coming to him in dreams and telling him to take sannyas. So I wanted to read this because it's kind of long. There's a wonderful history there. So many things of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and his, growing the Gaudiya Math. And so many, they had 64 maths at one point. He would put on these incredible fairs with so many dioramas. This is where the dioramas thing came. We have the pastimes and everything. And he would also have, like jugglers and come, and people would come to attract the mass of people so that they would also hear Hare Krishna. They would get books, and get prasadam, in this way. So thousands and thousands of people. This is one thing he did. And it was a real, dynamic preacher. And those who followed him closely, he also became very dynamic. So this speech that Prabhupada gave, if you forgive me, I'm going to read this. It's a little lengthy, but it gives us a very great insight into Prabhupada's feeling for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and his powerful preaching. So, this was delivered on February 12th, 1936. This was the appearance day in 1936. It fell on the 12th, on the occasion of the appearance of anniversary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, before the members of the Sri Gaudiya Math in Bombay. Gentlemen, on behalf of the members of the Bombay branch of the Gaudiya Math, let me welcome you all because you have so kindly joined us tonight in our congregational offerings of homage to the lotus feet of the world teacher, Acharya Dev, who is the founder of this Gaudiya mission and the present Acharya of the Sri Sri Vishnu Vaishnav Raj Sabha. I mean my eternal divine master, Paramahansa Parivrajak Acharya Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. 62 years ago, on this auspicious day, the Acharya Dev made his appearance by the call of Thakur Bhakti Manod at Sri Chaitra, Jagannath Puri Dham. Gentlemen, the offering of such an homage as has been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev is not a sectarian concern. For when we speak of the fundamental principle of Guru Dev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my Guru from yours or anyone else's. There is only one Guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me, and all others. The Guru or Acharya Dev, as we learn from the bona fide scriptures, delivers the message of the absolute world, the transcendental abode of the absolute personality, where everything non-differentially serves the absolute truth. We have heard so many times, Mahajano yena gata sapanta, traverse the trail which your previous acharya has passed. But we have hardly tried to understand the real purport of this shloka. If we scrutinizingly study this proposition, we can understand that the Mahajan is one, and the royal road to the transcendental world is also one. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it is said, Tad Vijnanatam Sagurum Me Vabhagachet Samit Pani Shotriyam Brahmanishtam. This is one of Prabhupada's favorite verses about the need to surrender to a guru. In order to learn the transcendental science, one must approach the bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession, who is fixed in the absolute truth. Thus it has been enjoined herewith that in order to receive that transcendental knowledge, one must approach the guru. Therefore, if the absolute truth is one, about which we think there is no difference of opinion, the guru also cannot be two. The Acharya Dev to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage is not the guru of a sectarian institution or one out of many differing exponents of the truth. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru, the guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly while others do not obey him directly. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it is said, Acharyam mam vijaniyam navamanneta karhi chit namartya buddhya suyeta sarvadeva mayoguru. This is uttered by Krishna himself. One should understand the spiritual master to be as good as I am, said the Blessed Lord. Nobody should be jealous of the spiritual master or think of him as an ordinary man, because the spiritual master is the sum total of all the demigods. Now, always, being an editor and having my editorial antenna up all the time. This Blessed Lord here indicates this whole transcript was edited by Hayagriva Prabhu, and that's how we come down. That's why. But anyway, he did a great job. Prabhupada continues, nobody should be jealous of the spiritual master or think of him as an ordinary man, because the spiritual master is the sum total of all the demigods, close quote. That is, the Acharya has been identified with God himself. He has nothing to do with the affairs of this mundane world. He does not descend here to meddle with the affairs of temporary necessities, but to deliver the fallen, conditioned souls. The souls or entities who have come here to the material world with the motive of enjoyment by the mind and the 5 organs of sense perception. He appears before us to reveal the light of the Vedas and to bestow upon us the blessings of full-fledged freedom, after which we should hanker at every step of our life's journey. The transcendental knowledge of the Vedas was first uttered by God to Brahma, the creator of this particular universe. From Brahma, the knowledge descended to Narada, from Narada to Vyasadeva, from Vyasadeva to Madhva, and in this process of disciplic succession, the transcendental knowledge was transmitted by one disciple to another till it reached Lord Gauranga, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who posed as the disciple and successor of Sri Ishwara Puri. The present Acharya Dev is the 10th disciple representative from Sri Rupa Goswami, the original representative of Lord Chaitanya, who preached this transcendental tradition in its fullness. The knowledge that we receive from our Gurudev is not different from that imparted by God himself and the succession of the Acharyas in the preceptorial line of Brahma. We adore this auspicious day as Sri Vyasa Puja Titi because the Acharya is the living representative of Vyasadeva, the divine compiler of the Vedas, the Puranas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, and Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this should enliven us too. We're also coming in that line. We're getting that same teaching, that pure teaching, carried on by Srila Prabhupada's sincere followers. And of course through his books. One who interprets the divine sound or Shabda Brahma by his imperfect sense perception cannot be a real spiritual guru, because in the absence of proper disciplinary training under the bona fide Acharya, the interpreter is sure to differ from Vyasadeva, as the Mayavadis do. Srila Vyasadeva is the prime authority of Vedic revelation, and therefore such an irrelevant interpreter as he just described cannot be accepted as the guru or acharya, howsoever equipped he may be with all the acquirements of material knowledge. As it is said in the Padma Puran, Sampradaya Vihinaye Mantraste Nishpalamataha. Unless you are initiated by a bona fide spiritual master in the disciplic succession, the mantra that you might have received is without any effect. Close quote. On the other hand, one who has received the transcendental knowledge by oral reception from the bona fide preceptor in the disciplic chain, and who has sincere regard for the real Acharya, must needs be enlightened with the revealed knowledge of the Vedas. But this knowledge is permanently sealed to the cognitive approach of the empiricists, as said in the Shvetashvara Upanishad, Yasya devi para bhakti yata devi tatagaro tasaite katatayata prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who simultaneously have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So you can see, Prabhupada carried this same mood forward in his own institution and preaching, and insisting on his disciples also taking up and becoming bona fide representatives of the line. This is how things are sustained and grow. Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us to have even the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vyasadeva or his bona fide representative. Every moment we are being deceived by the knowledge of our direct perception. It is all the creation or concoction of the mind, which is always deceiving, changing, and flickering. We cannot know anything of the transcendental region by our limited, perverted method of observation and experiment, but all of us can lend our eager ears for the all-reception of the transcendental sound transmitted from that region to this through the unadulterated medium of Sri Gurudev or Sri Vyasadeva. Therefore, gentlemen, we should surrender ourselves today at the feet of the representative of Sri Vyasadeva for the elimination of all our differences bred by our unsubmissive attitude. It is accordingly said in the Gita, Tad vidi padipatena padiprashnena sevaya upadekshante te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Just approach the wise and bona fide spiritual master. Surrender unto him first and try to understand him by inquiries and service. Such a wise spiritual master will enlighten you with transcendental knowledge, for he has already known the absolute truth. To receive the transcendental knowledge, we must completely surrender ourselves to the real Acharya in a spirit of ardent inquiry and service. This is Prabhupada's famous submissive all reception. This comes out in the books. And it's either, this is the shushu-sho word. It's always translated as either submissive or ardent hearing. It's two things. Actual performance of service to the Absolute under the guidance of the Acharya is the only vehicle by which we can assimilate the transcendental knowledge. Today's meeting for offering our humble services and homage to the feet of the Acharya Dev will enable us to be favored with the capacity of assimilating the transcendental knowledge so kindly transmitted by him to all persons without distinction. Now, it's interesting to just interrupt for a second. And this is Prabhupada's mood, and this was the way in which the Gaudiya Math had grown so powerful. This is all before the troubles. We call the troubles in the Gaudiya Math that eventually caused its demise. Whereas when Bhaktisiddhanta left, there were all of this jockeying to who's going to be the next Acharya, who's going to be, even though he instructed to be a GBC, that same phrase he used. But here's the real mood, and this was Prabhupada's mood, and why he was so enthusiastic to serve the Gaudiya Math and help in its, because there was unity. There was unity in the followers. Gentlemen, we are all more or less proud of our past Indian civilization, but we actually do not know the real nature of that civilization. We cannot be proud of our past material civilization, which is now 1,000 times greater than in days gone by. It is said that we are passing through the age of darkness, the Kali Yuga. What is this darkness? The darkness cannot be due to backwardness in material knowledge, because we now have more of it than formerly. If not, we ourselves, our neighbors at any rate, have plenty of it. Therefore, we must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to a lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement. Can we close those? The sun is coming in real bright. We've lost the clue to our, let's see. Therefore, we must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement, which is the prime necessity of human life and the criterion of the highest type of human civilization. Throwing of bombs from airplanes is no advancement of civilization from the primitive, uncivilized practice of dropping big stones on the heads of enemies from the tops of hills. Improvement in the art of killing our neighbors by means of machine guns and poisonous gases is certainly no advancement from primitive barbarism, which prided itself on its art of killing by bows and arrows. Don't forget, they've been World War I. That's the poisonous gases. Nor does the development of a sense of pampered selfishness prove anything more than intellectual animalism. True human civilization is very different from all these states, and therefore in the Katha Upanishad there is this emphatic call, Uttishtata jagata prapavarane bodhata churasiddhara nishita dodatya durgam patastat kavahyo vadanti. Wake up and try to understand the boon which you now have in this human form of life. The path of spiritual realization is very difficult. It is sharp like a razor's edge. That is the opinion of learned transcendental scholars. Now you can hear in this address Prabhupada's mood of preaching, which is echoing Bhaktisiddhanta, who's known as the lion guru, completely uncompromising. He would see some impersonalists across the street, and he would go across the street and get him by the lapels and start berating him, and it caused a lot of to-do. But that was his mood. Because it's so dangerous. The misguiders in this world are the worst enemies of the living entities. All of these crazy people, this theory or that theory, that material knowledge is that's the battle we're in. Trying to get people interested in this transcendental knowledge which can actually benefit them. So that battle is coming from Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada. Thus, while others were yet in the womb of historical oblivion, the sages of India had developed a different kind of civilization, which enabled them to know themselves. They had discovered that we are not at all material entities, but that we are all spiritual, permanent, and indestructible servants of the Absolute. But because we have, against our better judgment, chosen to completely identify ourselves with this present material existence, our sufferings have multiplied according to the inexorable law of birth and death, with its consequent diseases and anxieties. These sufferings cannot be really mitigated by any provision of material happiness, because matter and spirit are completely different elements. It is just as if you took an aquatic animal out of the water and put it on the land, supplying all manner of happiness possible on land. The deadly sufferings of the animal are not capable of being relieved at all until it is taken out of its foreign environment. Spirit and matter are completely contradictory things. All of us are spiritual entities. We cannot have perfect happiness, which is our birthright, however much we may meddle with the affairs of the mundane things. Perfect happiness can be ours only when we are restored to our natural state of spiritual existence. This is the distinctive message of our ancient Indian civilization. This is the message of the Gita. This is the message of the Vedas and the Puranas. And this is the message of all the real Acharyas, including our present Acharya Dev, in the line of Lord Chaitanya. Gentlemen, although it is imperfectly that we have been enabled by His grace to understand the sublime messages of our Acharya Dev, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajaka Acharya Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, we must admit that we have realized definitely that the divine message from His holy lips is the congenial thing for suffering humanity. All of us should hear Him patiently. If we listen to the transcendental sound without unnecessary opposition, He will surely have mercy upon us. The Acharya's message is to take us back to our original home, back to God. Let me repeat, therefore, that we should hear Him patiently, follow Him in the measure of our conviction, and bow down at His lotus feet for releasing us from our present causeless unwillingness for serving the Absolute and all souls. From the Gita we learn that even after the destruction of the body, the Atma or soul is not destroyed. He is always the same, always new and fresh. Fire cannot burn Him, water cannot dissolve Him, the air cannot dry Him, the sword cannot kill Him. He is everlasting and eternal, and this is also confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who know this verse. Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridatuke swadi kalatradisha bhome ijyadi yat tirtha buddhi saline nakarhechid janesha biggesha sa eva gokaraha. Anyone who accepts his bodily bag of three elements, bile, mucus, and air, as his self, who has an affinity for an intimate relationship with his wife and children, who considers his land as worshipable, who takes birth in the waters of the takes bath in the waters of the holy places of pilgrimage, but never takes advantage of those persons who are in actual knowledge, he's no better than an ass or a cow. Unfortunately, in these days we have all been turned foolish by neglecting our real comfort and identifying the material cage with ourselves. We have concentrated all our energies for the meaningless upkeep of the material cage for its own sake, completely neglecting the captive soul within. The cage is meant for the undoing of the bird. The bird is not meant for the welfare of the cage. Let us therefore deeply ponder this. All our activities are now turned toward the upkeep of the cage, and the most we do is try to give some food to the mind by art and literature. But we don't know that this mind is also material in a more subtle form. This is stated in the Gita. You know this one. Bhumarapo nalo vayu kangmano buddharevacha ahankara itiyamme binna bhaktarashada. Earth, water, fire, air, sky, intelligence, mind, and ego are all my separated energies. We've scarcely tried to give any food to the soul, which is distinct from the body and mind. Therefore, we're all committing suicide in the proper sense of the term. The message of the Acharya Dev is to give us a warning to halt such wrong activities. Let us therefore bow down at his lotus feet for the unalloyed mercy and kindness he has bestowed upon us. Gentlemen, don't for a moment think that my Guru Dev wants to put a complete break on the modern civilization, an impossible feat. But let us learn from him the art of making the best use of a bad bargain, and let us understand the importance of this human life, which is fit for the highest development of true consciousness. The best use of the rare human life should not be neglected, as it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam. Labdva sudurlabhamidam bahusambhavante manushyamatatamanichyamapiha dhira turnam yateta napatena namrityayavan niksheyasaya vishayar kalusarvatakshyat. This human life is obtained after many, many births, and although it is not permanent, it can offer the highest benefits. Therefore, a sober and intelligent person should immediately try to fulfill his mission and attain the highest profit in life before another death occurs. You should avoid sense gratification, which is available in all circumstances. Let us not misuse this human life in the vain pursuit of material enjoyment, or in other words, for the sake of only eating, sleeping, fearing, and sensuous activities. The Acharya Dev's message is conveyed by the words of Srila Rupa Goswami. Anasaktasya vishayanyataham apayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyamuchyate prapanchakataya buddhya harisambandhi vastunaha mumukshibi parityago vairagyam palgukatyate. One is said to be situated in the fully renounced order of life if he lives in accordance with Krishna consciousness. He should be without attachment for sense gratification and should accept only what is necessary for the upkeep of the body. On the other hand, one who renounces things which could be used in the service of Krishna under the pretext that such things are material doesn't practice complete renunciation. The purport of these slokas can only be realized by fully developing the rational portion of our life, not the animal portion. Sitting at the feet of the Acharya Dev, let us try to understand from the transcendental source of knowledge what we are, what is the universe, what is God, what is our relationship with Him. The message of Lord Chaitanya is the message for the living entities and the message of the living world. Lord Chaitanya did not bother himself for the upliftment of this dead world, which is suitably named Martya Loka, the world where everything is destined to die. He appeared before us 450 years ago to tell us something of the transcendental universe, where everything is permanent and everything is for the service of the Absolute. But recently, Lord Chaitanya has been misrepresented by some unscrupulous persons, and the highest philosophy of the Lord has been misinterpreted to be the cult of the lowest type of society. We are glad to announce tonight that our Acharya Dev, with his unusual kindness, saved us from this horrible type of degradation, and therefore we bow down at his lotus feet with all humility. Gentlemen, it has been a mania of the cultured or uncultured society of the present day to accredit the personality of Godhead with merely impersonal features and to stultify him by claiming that he has no senses, no form, no activity, no head, no legs, no enjoyment. This has also been the pleasure of the modern scholars due to their sheer lack of proper guidance and true introspection in the spiritual realm. All these empiricists think alike. Quote, all the enjoyable things should be more monopolized by the human society or by a particular class only, and the impersonal God should be a mere order supplier for their whimsical feats. We are happy that we have been relieved of this horrible type of malady by the mercy of His Divine Grace, Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. He is our eye-opener, our eternal Father, our eternal preceptor, our eternal guide. Let us therefore bow down at his lotus feet on this auspicious day. So it goes on quite a bit. Oh, it's not that much, just another page or two. Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still His Divine Grace, my Gurudev, has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invincible darkness of empirical knowledge. We are now so much on the safe side that no amount of philosophical argument by the empiric schools of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of our eternal dependence on the lotus feet of His Divine Grace. Furthermore, we are prepared to challenge the most erudite scholars of the Mayavad school and prove that the personality of Godhead and His transcendental sports in Goloka alone constitute the sublime information of the Vedas. There are explicit indications of this in the Chandogya Upanishad. Shyamat Chavalam Papadye, Shavalat Shyamam Papadye. I've never heard this one before. For receiving the mercy of Krishna, I surrender unto his energy, Radha. And for receiving the mercy of his energy, I surrender unto Krishna. Also in the Rig Veda, Tad Vishno Padamam Padang Sada Pashandi Suryo Daviva Chakshadatatam Vishno Yat Padamam Padam. No, Pajaris know this one, right? The lotus feet of Lord Vishnu are the supreme objective of all the demigods. These lotus feet of the Lord are as enlightening as the sun in the sky. The plain truth, so vividly explained in the Gita, which is the central lesson of the Vedas, is not understood or even suspected by the most powerful scholars of the empiric schools. Herein lies the secret of Sri Vyasa Puja. When we meditate on the transcendental pastimes of the Absolute Godhead, we are proud to feel that we are His eternal servitors, and we become jubilant and dance with joy. All glory to my Divine Master, for it is He who has, out of His unceasing flow of mercy, stirred up within us such a movement of eternal existence. Let us bow down at His lotus feet. Gentlemen, had He not appeared before us to deliver us from the thraldom of this gross worldly delusion, surely we should have remained for lives and ages in the darkness of helpless captivity. Had He not appeared before us, we would not have been able to understand the eternal truth of the sublime teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Had He not appeared before us, we could not have been able to know the significance of the first shloka of the Brahma Samhita altogether. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and He is the prime cause of all causes. Personally, I have no hope for any direct service for the coming crores of births of the sojourn of my life. But I am confident that some day or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am now at present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me with all my earnestness pray at the lotus feet of my Divine Master to allow me to suffer the lot for which I am destined due to my past misdoings, but to let me have this power of recollection, that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the Almighty Absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my Divine Master. Let me therefore bow down at His lotus feet with all the humility at my command. Abhay Charandas, for members of Shri Gaudiya Math, Bombay, 1936. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. So we will convene, hopefully, all of us, at 11:50 for the Pushpanjali and the Kirtan and Prasad. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.